If the name Rachel Lindsay doesn't ring a bell, just think of her as the first Black Bachelorette. Back in 2017,
You are so charming, it scares me.
Rachel was a contestant on the 21st season of The Bachelor, fighting for hottie and Bachelor Nation favorite Nick Viall's heart. Although she snagged the lucky first impression rose on night 1, Rachel ended up coming in third on season 21. Thankfully, the fans loved attorney Rachel's no-nonsense vibe so much that ABC decided to make her the new Bachelorette, their first Black lead ever in Bachelor history. Thanks to her historic position, Rachel's led a pretty public life since finishing the show. But where is she now? And where is her hot Miami hubby? If you're a reality TV fan, chances are you've seen at least one season of ABC's iconic franchise, The Bachelorette. Previously hosted by longtime presenter Chris Harrison, The Bachelor and The Bachelorette are two of the most famous reality TV shows ever, and they've made some pretty big stars out of contestants on the series. Whether they're getting famous for finding love or losing it, the Bachelorette franchise has made several women into stars and even more into villains. On The Bachelorette, one lucky woman has the chance to date 20-some guys to try and figure out which is the man of her dream. While more seasons have ended in heartbreak than love, Season 13 Bachelorette Rachel Lindsay seems to be one of the lucky ones. On her season of The Bachelorette, Rachel had the chance to date and choose between 31 different men, and ABC did their best to make it the most diverse cast yet. From black to white and everything in between, from personal trainers to songwriters, Rachel had her pick of a ton of different men with very different backgrounds. While some fans thought this might make her decision easier, Rachel actually had a pretty hard time deciding on the man for her. It certainly didn't help that all of America had opinions on who she should and shouldn't go out with, and she was dealing with racist haters who were unhappy she won the title at all. The buzz around Rachel wasn't just from normal Bachelor and Bachelorette fans either. Since she was the first Black lead of the show, ABC was able to reach a whole new demographic. Black people who usually had little to no interest in reality TV or preferred competition shows like The Challenge or Big Brother suddenly were tuning into The Bachelorette every week to root for Rachel. Social media fan accounts were made for her, Twitter was abuzz with predictions about who she would end up with, and every aspect of her background was dug up by superfans who wanted to know everything about the real Rachel Lindsay. Luckily for Rachel, no scandals or drama were revealed in her past, which has been a problem for previous Bachelor Nation contestants. Her first night as the Bachelorette really determined where Rachel's story was going, even though she may not have known it yet. On that night, Rachel met her future husband, Brian Abasolo, and even gave him her first impression rose after sharing a kiss with him early in the evening. While she went on to flirt and talk to all of the other men that night, it was clear from the get-go that Rachel and Brian had some intense chemistry, and some viewers were convinced the lucky first impression rose meant he would be her final pick. However, their story wasn't a totally easy road. During the rest of the season, Rachel formed real relationships with other men on the show, and struggled emotionally to choose someone who was right for her. Unlike the rest of ABC's previous Bachelorettes, Rachel had a different kind of pressure on her to perform as the first Black lead in a Bachelor franchise. Fans had more expectations for her than for any other contestant, and with the extra viewership she brought in, plus the positive publicity she brought ABC, she was under an enormous amount of pressure. Not only did Rachel have to deal with crazy racists in her comments, she was even facing criticism from fans who thought she should be with a certain type of guy. Some viewers were angry that Rachel didn't pursue only Black men during her season, or give them preferential treatment. Others accused her of preferring white men or not finding Black men attractive. It didn't help that some of the Black men who were on Rachel's season weren't great contestants. Demario Jackson, who fans were excited by at the beginning of the season because of his confidence and chemistry with Rachel, was outed for having a secret girlfriend right before coming on the show. According to the girl, who showed up to one of Rachel's dates to warn her about Demario, he had dumped her so he could come on The Bachelorette, which is against the rules of the show. When Rachel confronted Demario about it, she wasn't convinced by his attempts to make his previous relationship seem like a situationship, and she sent him home. Thankfully, there were plenty of other black men for Rachel to choose from, and some of them she formed good relationships with throughout her time on the show. Eric, Diggy, and Kenny were just a few of the African American men she found connections with, and Eric made it almost to the final week as one of her top 3. However, it became clearer and clearer as Rachel continued trying to find love that she had an instant and passionate connection with Brian Abasolo, a chiropractor from Miami. Whether it was his Spanish, his looks, or his magic massages that won over Rachel, by the end of the season she was completely smitten with the back-cracking expert. Unfortunately, some people were pretty unhappy with her choice, and they weren't quiet about it. After Rachel chose Brian, unhappy fans and haters alike took to Twitter and other social media platforms to discuss how they felt. Even though she had given all of the men in her season an equal chance, regardless of skin color, some black fans were disappointed that Rachel hadn't chosen black love. Logical fans agreed that the heart wants what it wants, but others were quick to try and accuse Rachel of being a traitor to her community, and it really affected her ability to celebrate being engaged. Maybe that's part of the reason the couple remained engaged for 2 years after the proposal, only tying the knot in August 2019. Since then, Rachel's managed to make a fairly good career out of her Bachelorette fame. Although her reality TV introduction was a bit of a roller coaster, Rachel has parlayed her time in the Bachelorverse into a series of high-profile hosting gigs, and has even returned to the show as a support to other Bachelorettes. Known as an avid sports fan on her season, it shouldn't surprise anyone to know that Rachel was most excited about working with ESPN once she had time to catch her breath. Starting as a guest host on one of the network's popular sports talk shows, Rachel had the chance to work alongside Stephen A. Smith. Before the year was out, ESPN had set Rachel up with her first starring radio host gig, discussing football with an ex-Dallas Cowboys linebacker. While it isn't practicing law, for an ex-reality TV star, she was doing pretty good. The pandemic made it clear that a lot of celebrities weren't actually that interesting once they didn't have shows, movies, and interviews making them look that way. Fortunately, this didn't seem to be a problem for Rachel, who didn't seem to let COVID-19 slow her down at all. Instead, she took on a full-time correspondent job with Extra and started her own podcast. But her troubles with Bachelor Nation were far from over. After making multiple appearances on The Bachelorette as a guide for her friends, being a judge on the Bachelor Winter Games, and co-hosting a podcast called Bachelor Happy Hour, Rachel shocked fans when she announced she was leaving behind the Bachelor franchise forever. Why would Rachel leave behind a franchise that had made her and her husband famous, not to mention introduce them? Chances are, it was the racist scandal over Chris Harrison's forgiveness of the Bachelor contestant Rachel Kirkconnell and the explosive interview that followed. Let us remind you what happened. During the season of The Bachelor that Kirkconnell was on, the franchise was celebrating having its first black male lead, Matt James. Kirkconnell and James hit it off right away, and all was sunshine and roses until her 2018 sorority photos resurfaced, showing her at an antebellum slavery Old South themed party. Yes, you heard that right. In his interview with Rachel Lindsay, Chris defended Rachel Kirkconnell, claiming she was a victim of cancel culture. Shockingly, Lindsay was not impressed. After Chris's weak defense for Kirkconnell and Rachel's response went viral, fans were supportive of Rachel's attempt to remind Chris of the history of the antebellum South. She even asked him, "If I went to that party, what would I represent?" Enough negative publicity over Chris's shady comments caused ABC to remove him from the Bachelor franchise. But it isn't surprising that Rachel didn't feel good about staying either. She was getting constant abuse from the side of Bachelor Nation she referred to as the Bachelor Clan, who would take any excuse to send horrible messages and even death threats to the former Bachelorette. Rachel's relationship with Chris Harrison, whom she used to call her fairy godfather, was also totally ruined. Haters who wanted to see Lindsay fail were convinced that without Bachelor Nation, she'd lose the spotlight and therefore her career. Instead, she wrote her first book and became more serious about starting a family with handsome hubby Brian, while continuing to host her personal podcast, Higher Learning. Now that she's free to say what she wants when she wants to, Rachel hasn't been afraid to give people a real look at the problems within the Bachelor franchise. On the personal side, she's dedicated to starting a family with Brian sometime soon. The two have kept their love life extremely private post-show. probably to prevent even more online abuse. But recently, Rachel seems more comfortable sharing her real life with fans. When you think about it, Rachel Lindsay's role as the first Black Bachelorette wasn't all the fairy tale it was cracked up to be. While Rachel surely now considers it a blessing, with a loving husband and a great career, she had to endure racism, tokenism, and betrayal to do so. What do you think of Rachel Lindsay's journey through and after the Bachelor franchise? Do you support her, or were you disappointed by her season of the show? Either way, leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to tune in here for more true celebrity stories.